Hello everyone, this is Guab, and today we're going to be talking about pretenders and all the different types of pretenders. In my mind, there's 11 different styles of pretenders, and they're all used for different purposes, and we're going to go over them, give some examples, and say whether they've gotten better or worse, and hopefully you'll get some fun ideas to try yourself. If you just want a quick summary, I have dropped it down in the description. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first and kind of simplest kind of pretender is the Awake Expander. Whoopsie. Is the Awake Expander, and these are categorized by just having like really high protection, often have built-in Regen, often have Berserker and Fear and Awe and a bunch of other stuff. Nations that want Awake Expanders are usually nations with weak expansion or that are stronger in the late game. Expansion is a lot harder in Dominion 6, so and it often takes a little bit to get the ball rolling. So I think actually Awake Expanders are better in Dominion 6 because getting a lead is even more important. However, expanders have been nerfed. Monsters have been nerfed with Inept Researcher and also Inept Smith, so that makes them a bit worse. But there's also some Awake Expander Titans, like the Great Mother. Really any Titan that has a lot of built-in armor can probably expand. Here is an example for ctis. We have 21 protection, and we also have Berserker, so we're going to get up to 26 protection. We can cast Iron Skin, which would get us up to 31 protection. We also have Fear. This is pretty good. We're going to get Revig for our Communion Mages. And he does 4 attacks. This is a Great Awake Expander. It's decently cheap, so we can still have all right scales. Our chariots take a decent amount of resources, so this can really help kickstart us. And we have great mages, so it's kind of a good fit for ctis. It's less necessary than in Dominions 5 since your chariots are a lot better, but I still think it's kind of nice for just jump-starting everything else. Then we'll go ahead and go into the next expander type, which is the Awake Scales Expander. I can both also be a Titan or a monster. So this is basically just like the Awake Expander, except the Awake Expander, you want something that can kind of expand into anything and maybe also be useful for, First and Second Wars and stuff like that. The Awake Scales Expander is just a variation of it, that you are just being as light as kind of fucking possible on, blesses and paths and everything else. So, hey, this guy with just 2 Earth, 2 in Nature, he can expand pretty safely. It's not necessarily going to be pretty, but you're going to get regen. You're going to get him up to 25, 26, and he can trample. He has a little bit of revig, but the biggest thing is that you still have great scales. We've got Throne 1 temperature, but we still have, we have growth 3, magic 2, and then, plus 2 here. And then we also have, 5 scales. So this is really great. The Awake Scales Expander are mostly just useful on nations that can expand when their cap is clear and also scale decently well, and they don't really need a bless. EA Ulm in Dominions 5, I really loved running Fenrir because he was super cheap, and he also spawned a bunch of little woofsies in order to help him expand. In EA, there's not really any nations that need an Awake Scales Expander. I mean, you could maybe, let's say you're going Scales Hinnom, you could go an Awake Scales Expander because you have a lot of, resource-intensive troops that can expand really well, once you're more cleared out. I think Awake Scales Expander are the most useful in the late age because lots of times you have really great Scales troops. They're just super resource-intensive, and also expansion is a little bit harder. I think that they're buffed compared to Dominions 5 because there's less scales to take. So, I'm really not losing out on a scales nation here in anything except Bless. And it's okay, that's totally fine. And hey, this guy's still going to be useful in, First War, but can't take on an army by himself or anything. And also, hey, we still get a tiny Bless even without getting 4 in a path. So, that's nice too. Would I recommend people to do this? No, I would not recommend an Awake Scales Expander unless you were using it for a very specific purpose to get yourself jump started. And even then, I'd probably only recommend it for the late age. But it is better. So that just kind of goes to show, like, they weren't super good overall. Next is a classic that I think is getting better, which is the Awake Researcher. Most of the time, people only took these if they were kind of going meme blesses, like for a meme strategy in Dominions 5. I think that they're more viable in Dominions 6. What they're really useful for is for nations that want to thug or super combatant expand. Because, hey, look, you know, I have this guy. Awake Researcher. Took him on Caelum. Yeah, okay. So, like, Caelum with their Eagle Kings, they can expand actually with Shockwave, Mistform, and then, like, Iron Skin. So, you know, they just need Evo 2, Ult 2. You can, like, Ult 3 is a lot safer, but you can expand actually with Evo 2, Ult 2. And so, like, this is all about, hey, you know, we're going to get that research up. They can do it. So, like, you know, first two expansion parties are going to be, like, normal troops, but then after that we can expand with Eagle Kings. Pretty good, you know, Gids, Inspiring Researcher, Adept Researcher, 60 Research. You know, this really helps jumpstart your research. I actually think they're better than they were in Dominions 5 because infrastructure is more expensive and it takes longer. So, like, you're going to have a research advantage for longer in the game. I really like the Awake Researcher, but I also really like Thug builds, so I'm a little bit biased for that. But yeah, I don't think it's bad at all. I mean, like, Enchanted Blood, Blood Surge, Revig, like, this is, like, if I'm having a casting Thug, you know, that's going to be in the middle of things, you know, casting Shockwave or casting, I forget what the fire one is, or even, like, Hands of Death, or Fist of Iron or something like that. Really great. We're going to get, 4 Revig, and Enchanted Blood is just pretty decent for making sure they stay alive and topped off. So, yeah, I like it quite a bit. I want to play with it. Now, if you were to ask me, is this the optimal way to play Caelum? I would say no. I would say if you were... the optimal way to play Caelum in my mind is still Scales. Maybe with a Strength Bless, because you have problems with piercing through things, and, hey, you can do some stuff with your archers, and then, you know, your thugs can, like, beat up giants and stuff. But, it's fun, and you can expand with it pretty safely. So, if you want, go ahead and try it. Awake Researchers, I actually quite like him. Next, we're gonna go into one of the new type of pretenders, and this is kind of a midway between a Hellbless and an Awake Researcher. The biggest thing that you're doing is you're just pumping up one path a lot in order to get multiple incarnates in that one path. So, if you're going nature, you can go like Regen Barkskin, or like Regen Larger, or even Barkskin Larger. You know, if you're going Glamour, which is probably what I think is the best, is you go Awe Fear. So, Awe Dread and Awe and Dread stack really well together. You can also go like Hardskin Fortitude, which I don't think is that good. If you go up Blood, which is the cheapest one, you could go Blood Bond, Enchanted Blood, which is very good for the early game. But anyway, so like, hey, you get this great combo starting off the game. You know, you get decent research, you get a decent chassis, whatever. So like, this is 20 less research, but you know, we Glamour generator. I'm not necessarily 100% sold that this is better than an Awake Researcher, but like, if you're playing Yomi, I mean, I took the Awake Researcher, Awake Incarnate stacker on Helheim because, hey, Awe and Fear gonna be really good on your thugs. It's good on your troops. You know, you have your built-in Glamour. Awe actually makes your Glamour pop slower. So like, this is pretty good. I mean, if I was playing a game with Helheim, this gives you enough tools. I actually do think, yeah, this gives you enough tools to win the game as Helheim, I think. Yeah, you get some nice path diversity, everything else. So, I don't know. I guess the Awake Incarnate stacker really fills a lot of holes. You know, you're going to get your research off online early. You can fill in your path diversity. These are all paths that we're missing. I mean, except Glamour. And yeah, it's a good tool, good utility. We can even get, 6. And like, yeah, I would happily play this as Helheim. Probably not optimal. Probably stats. Well, I don't know. This might be optimal on Helheim. I don't know for sure. I've not played Helheim in Dom 6, but I would be happy to try this in a game. And then the last awake last awake kind of pretender we have to. Oh, nope, this is the Dormant. Here we go. The last pretender we have to try is a Hellbless. This is a Hellbless for early age Abyssia. We have 2x shock skin. We have barksin, shock resistance, barkskin, enchanted blood bond. This is gonna bring our dudes up to I hate that how when you're looking at your pretenders you can't look, but I think this brings up our our sacreds up to 24. 24 protection with enchanted blood. They're not going to go down, and shock resistance. Blood bond has a big weakness where it makes you vulnerable to gifts of heaven, but also makes you vulnerable to shock. So this protects it. Like barksin, really good on Abyssia because, hey, they already have a bunch of fire resistance. So this is really going to give us good fire, good shock resistance. We can still be vulnerable to some like astral spells and stuff like that, but like with this, you're going to run over people. This is good bless. This is good. The one problem that, I would be happy to run this into a game. The problem is with this much death and your capital being Wasteland, you're eventually going to not be able to recruit your sacreds as EA Abyssia. So I don't super know what you're going to do. Also, I guess just to mention, this chassis, pretty good. You're already going to want to go blood as actually this is not mindless. I thought this chassis would be mindless. Okay. I was gonna say you can use him for horror spams and stuff like that, but you can still use him to teleport on people, but he'll just have to sit in the back line. You can still do some good magics with this. So pretty good. Helps. It mostly just reinforces your strength and makes you run over people. So I wouldn't. Because I don't think Abyssia needs a Hellblessed. But anyway, this is kind of what it is. Hellblesses are great on nations with strong sacreds, which are strong enough to like hard carry the nation, which I would definitely categorize EA Abyssia as one of them. Okay, so now on to the Dormant Pretender types, which are going to be coming out at around turn 12. With the first one being a Dormant Defender. Dormant Defenders were super common in... they weren't super common, but they were pretty common in EA. They were pretty common in Dominions 5, as they were pretty good, especially for nations that were likely to get rushed, or nations that just needed some patching, or light blesses. Because, hey, it doesn't help for your, early game or expansion or anything else, but it will help you in your first war, and it gives you 150 extra points. So, pretty good. Here we have an example of a Dormant Defender for EA Abyssia. This helps patch several of EA Abyssia's holes. It gives them an Earth Astral Mage. So, hey, now they can make communion things to make their mages communion masters or communion slaves. And also gives us nature, so this is helping us break up way higher in these paths. Also, since this guy has astral, he can teleport. And something really important for Dormant Defenders is that they have a magic face movement, because you need these guys to be able to get up on top of people. So, decent HP, decent stats. You're going to need to put armor on him, but, he is... Earth, Astral, Nature. Like, he can put Regen, Body Ethereal, Iron Skin, Temper Flesh, and maybe some equipment on him. And he also actually has a Forge bonus too, which, you definitely don't have on EA Abyssia. So, this guy might be a forged slave, kind of. But, like, yeah, he has a lot of flexibility. You can do a lot with him. EA Abyssia, I'm not throwing away any scales here. You still have decent scales. And this Bless really kind of empowers your Sacred Fire Mages. If you're into someone without Fire Resist, Farcaster and 4 Revig, it's going to really, really help. Even just for casting Fireballs or Incinerate. So, yeah, Dormant Defenders, they're really useful at helping plug some gaps that a nation has. They need to have Astral for Teleport or Air for Cloud Trapeze. And they're overall decent chassis that you just slap some stuff on. Alternatively, there's also immobiles that you can use as a Dormant Defender. So like the Monolith, or even Fountain of Blood you can use if you slap some Astral on it so it can teleport. There's not really any limit. I have personally used a Lich as a Dormant Defender because I was rushing Enchant 5 anyway. And so I just had a bunch of death, and he was just a Hordes of Skeletons caster. Not the best thing in the world, but hey, it worked for reinforcing armies and catching people by surprise. But yeah, this is prime example. And as I said before, like, you usually do it on nations that have a fine time expanding, but are going to have problems in their first war. And this might sound strange, but I'm playing a EA Abyssia game right now and my first war is against Ubar, and it feels pretty rough because Ubar has a lot of fire resist, and this would help deal with it just because I can help take care of all his dudes. Granted, my mages, my troops are doing fine, and I'm probably going to win, but I had to get Const 3 to get Salt on some thugs. So anyway, great. Overall, have Dormant Defenders gotten better or worse? I would actually say that they're actually nerfed, because Battlefield wipes are hard, come out later. And so, like, hey, you can't just research Enchant 5 and then cast Foul Vapors and just have them be tanky. It's harder for them to kill everything. There's also going to be less prot, especially on the Titans. If you have an immobile, maybe that's going to be fine. Labs are more expensive, though, so, like, just teleporting your immobiles around is not quite as good as it was before. So I don't necessarily think Dormant Defenders are as good as they were before, but, like, a lot of nations still want them, like EA Baratos, nations that are known for kind of being a rush bait. Ubar definitely wants a Dormant Defender, in my personal opinion. So overall, pretty good. Another interesting Dormant type of Pretender is a Dormant Site Searcher, and so the reason I call it this is because the main purpose of this Pretender coming out dormant is you do not have much magic diversity, and so you basically use your god to search for magic diversity, and then you get a little bit up in Conjuration, and then you can summon all of the mage cross paths. So, like, here we can, use our Death and Water to summon the Death and Water mages, and Nature and Water. Yeah, like, we have all the cross paths. We can summon all the different mages here. This is pretty good. Here's with a light mage bless. Anyway, I think Dormant Site Searchers are pretty good on the nations that kind of want them, and so, like, EA Atlantis, even EA Oceania, EA Abyssia, just any nation that is super over-spec'd into one magic path, which, EA Abyssia super falls into. These can help immensely with your late game. Do I think this is optimal for EA Abyssia? I don't. I think indexing probably harder into your blood is, but hey, this gives a lot of flexibility. And this is actually currently the Pretender I'm running in my EA Abyssia game. And, I like it. Fire 4, Death 3 seems really bad, but I still actually have growths in all my plain and river. They grow by 2%, and farmland still grows by 4%, and so it's just like, yeah, it's These scales look atrocious, but they're actually not that bad. If I was doing this again, I probably wouldn't take Fortune 2. I'd probably take Misfortune 2, and I'd probably take Neutral Order Turmoil. Or maybe, I'd probably just take more candles. But anyway, Dormant Sight Searchers weren't that common in Dominions 5. They are slightly better in Dominion 6, just because there's the additional magic path of Glamour. And, they still are good researchers. They still, plug a lot of gaps. You could, take this guy Imprisoned, but, hey, then the sight searching is, you're going to miss out on 24 turns of all those gem income. And, honestly, in early age, I think it's super worth it, and maybe in middle age and late age, it's not. But, I'm definitely getting tens of extra magic gems a turn that I would have missed out on if I didn't have this guy. So I'm a big fan. I don't actually think that they're that good overall, but if you're going to play like a mono magic nation into the into the late game, I highly recommend a Dormant Sight Searcher. And it's mostly just to open up your eyes to kind of the possibilities. Don't think it's bad, but a lot of times it's a luxury you can't afford because you need your pretender to do other things. Next up, we have Dormant. Actually, this is the last of the Dormant Blesses. And last we have a Dormant Hellbless. And you might be like, what the heck is a Dormant Hellbless? Well, Dormant Hellblesses are for nations that can expand without the Hellbless, but benefit from having a Hellbless in their first war. And you might be like, well, Kalasa can't expand because this is a pretender for EA Kalasa. Kalisa. I think it's Kalasa. Anyway, well, yeah, you kind of need to use your sacreds and everything else. I actually disagree. If you look at EA Kalisa, actually Kalasa. Actually, let's just look at their nation, and so hey, Kalasa. Okay, it is Kalasa. Anyway. These guys, their bows do 16 damage, and their maces do 21 damage. So these guys are going to be piercing through everything, and they have 18 HP. They just have really low prot. So you might think that these guys are really bad and everything else, but they also outrange short bows. So even without that good of scales, you can actually expand with light band or archers and a screen of Avadi infantry. Or even a screen of Marcata, though I definitely think the screen of Avadi is better. And you'll just have these guys in the front to tank cavalry, because besides cavalry, the light band or archers beat everything. They beat militia, they beat dudes with shields, they beat other archers just because they outrange and they just kill other archers in one hit. Yeah, they lose to cavalry, and they're expensive, but with the increased gold in Dominion 6, you actually don't have to worry about the cavalry too much. I've tested this. You don't necessarily have the best expansion in the world, but you can expand safely and fine. And then your bless is going to come online. You have a magic phase, super combatant with 4 arms, and you have a really sick bless coming out. And most people don't like Blood Bond. And Blood Bond without Blood Vengeance, because hey, gifts from heavens and stuff can really kill you and screw you up. And I mean, Fortitude helps mitigate that. Enchanted Blood is not too bad, but I mean, your real power is in all your mages. I don't know. It gives you a lot of tools. You're gonna run over your first war. Mages come out harder. I think you have the time in order to get counters like Gifts of Heaven and stuff online. And by counters, I just mean you get your own mage core, so you can kind of deal with that stuff. Yeah, I like this a lot. I would try some more expansions with it and try some early wars against the AI, because I've only done expansion. Something that I might do is I might take Zero Growth and then just take Sloth 1, so you can get more archers faster. But I like it, and it feels pretty good to me. Do I think that you can play this in a normal game? Yes. In a normal MP game, you can play it. I don't know. Dormant Hellblesses weren't that good. They are slightly better now, because it's harder to get a Hellbless up, and so being dormant gets you a lot more points. But really, don't see too many people do this, because if you don't need a bless for expansion, why would you need one? Just take more scales. Another idea is you could take a dormant bless with like reanimators or something like that, because like reanimators is really good on your mages, and so you're not using your mages in expansion. So you could do something like that. And I have funsies over here. It's a dormant EA Ulm pretender, and it's just reanimators and revig. And so like, hey, you don't need reanimators, but I think Colossa is probably one of the best nations to run a Dormant Hellbless on, because you can just take it and scale really well. Overall, I would not recommend Dormant Hellblesses. You're compromising between a Hellbless and some more scales, and kind of in doing that, you lose a lot of the advantages that the Hellbless gives you. Because you can't just, like, if you're only recruiting your Sacreds as soon as this guy comes awake, then you're just not going to have enough for your first war. And if you recruit them all along, well, then they're just not going to be that good. Because, like, with just Enchanted Blood, you guys are going to die. So it's kind of a catch-22. But it's an interesting pretender type, and I have seen people run it in games. So, hey, there it is. And now we're on to Imprisoned pretenders, and those usually wake up at around turn 36. Plus or minus some turns. And let's first go over Imprisoned Scales. So Imprisoned Scales is all about, getting the best scales kind of possible, and then your bless is kind of secondary. And so here you have us here you see us take Irminsul, and he can cloud trapeze. He can teleport. And, he starts with a site that generates... this generates one nature gem a turn, which is actually pretty useful for EA Ulm. And he's an innate spellcaster, but, like, with these paths, he's actually not going to be helping your nation too much in fighting. He could teleport and add Howl, or, do gifts... Gifts of the Heaven spam would actually not be good. Would not be bad, especially with innate spellcaster. Or even, you could even use him as a Communion Slave. Because he can regen a lot. But anyway, so like Irminsul provides one extra growth path. These are literally perfect scales, basically. Oh, except we threw temperature 1, which is not bad. And revig for all your mages. But the purpose is to get as good a scales as possible, and this does it. And you do it on scales nations where you don't need the help out earlier. And this is pretty good. I would be happy to take this in a game. I think that Imprisoned Scales pretenders, though, are overall nerfed, because there's less scales for you to take. Because if this was Dominions 5, I would just be pumping, Order 3, Productivity 3, Luck 3, Magic 3, and it'd be like, oh heck, now I'm just gonna super outscale everyone. So this kind of only just a little bit outscales everyone, but still you have 6 Dominion, decent chassis. I wouldn't complain about this, and also the one extra nature gem a turn really adds up. Turn 36, that's going to be 36 magic gems, and hey, if you want to control any nature global early, that really helps. Would I recommend Imprisoned Scales? And usually Imprisoned Scales is running a Titan or an Immobile, just because they're the easiest way to pump up your Dominion. And Titan and Immobiles are the ones that also give you extra scale paths, because you need to take something that gives you productivity, order, or growth. And probably productivity and order are probably better than growth in this case. So not bad at all. But I don't think that they are the best. Next up, we have Imprisoned Rainbows, and here's an Imprisoned Rainbow for EA Ermor. And as you can see, hey, we're running another great chassis, which is the gray one, probably the best rainbow mage now. And here's just a normal rainbow bless. We have fire, shock, and cold resistance. We get Spirit Sight, Blood Surge, and Heroism. You know, our cavalry is going to be great with this. It can be used all game with the 5 fire, 10 shock, some cold resistance. Blood Surge is going to proc on our lances, and we still have Spirit Sight to either fight underground or, you know, fight against all the glamored and invisible units and stuff now. I mean, we don't have magic weapons, you know, which is kind of a big deal, but, you know, we do have heroism, and, you know, we have national healers and everything else, so heroism is quite good. Anyway, great chassis. Imprisoned Rainbows, still kind of just as good as they were in Dominions 5. I mean, they nerfed stats, and they nerfed resistances, but, you know, Revigoration is still great, Spirit Side is still great, Blood Surge is great, Heroism are great, you know, you have a lot more flexibility now with your paths. And also, you know, since this is Grey 1 Eternity, these paths kind of lie to you. It was 3 in everything except 4 in water, death, glamour, and blood. But, you know, we still have decent scales, decent everything. Super flexible. Pretty still good. I think that they're probably just as good as in 5, and that means they're better since a lot of different pretender types have gotten nerfed. But anyway, it was the bog standard, and I think Imprisoned Rainbows are going to remain the bog standard. And then the last one that we're going to talk about is Imprisoned. Oh, no, I might not have. Imprisoned Stats is. Oh, wait, Incarnate. Nope. Hellbless. Okay, I didn't actually make a pretender for this, and there's a reason for it. It's because they're basically non-existent now, so I'll just show you guys what I'm talking about. And this was Imprisoned Stats. So what you do is you take, like, this guy. Hey, I like him, and I want to run larger since I'm Pangea, and I want to go 9 fire because I'm going to stack attack skill 3 times. And so, like, hey, now in Dominion 6, if we want to do this, we can do this, and attack skill, and we'll just do fire 8. Anyway, so this only gives us 3 attack, and it gives us larger, while in Dominions 5, it would give us 6 attack and larger, and we're also paying more, and the biggest thing is just that, like, we don't actually need to take 8 if we want to take it 4 times or 3 times. We can even just take 2 fire, and then we can just take large attack skill. And so the thing that's limiting us is not how high the path is, especially for Imprisoned blesses, because hey, we're only going to be taking the low level. It's actually just how many bless points we have. And so Imprisoned stat blesses, you know, we're just trying to pump up 1 stat a lot of the time, and these were mainly just used for repel builds. They basically just no longer exist because rainbows just do the job that they did better. So yeah, there's no reason at all for Imprisoned Incarnates to exist anymore. Imprisoned Incarnate stackers. Sorry. Oh my. Yeah, sorry. I misread this. Yeah, and so, like, there's just no reason for them to exist anymore. Because it's just too expensive to go 9 in the path. And, like, hey, we're just going to get 3 attack skill. Like, it's just, there's no reason to. It's worse. You could say maybe we're doing it for the chassis, but, like, I don't believe it. I don't think that's really good at all. So I would not recommend doing Imprisoned stat blesses with, specifically with, the mobiles and the titans. You can do a rainbow, an Imprisoned rainbow with, for stat bless it if you want. I don't necessarily think that that's bad, so we just use this chassis again, and we'd go 3 3 3 4 4 4 4, and we just run like blood surge larger and attack skill 5 times. And so I talked about stat blesses in a previous video, but yeah, it's kind of sad because I really loved being able to take like 9 fire and kind of justifying it. But there's no real reason to do that now. Another pretender type that did occasionally exist, but I don't think is good at all anymore, is the Imprisoned Incarnate. So it's just like, hey, I'm imprisoned and I'm gonna take an Incarnate Bless and it's gonna come out in turn 36. And it's like, you might think that that's good, but you'd be wrong. Most nations can't operate without like their pretender, without whatever benefit you're getting for so many turns. If there's a specific reason that you want to do it, let's say you're playing you're playing ctis and you took you wanted to use your lizards that your priest can summon as a soul vortex battery for your Sauromancers, and so like you're just rushing alt 6, which is not bad. It's not bad at all on this nation. You can communion up and drop barkskin, and it gives you soul vortex and invulnerability. And so like, let's say your goal was to just do that. I mean, I could see taking, why not? You could take this Imprisoned and do, a regeneration bless Imprisoned, and you're just using it for soul vortex batteries or something like that. Even in this case, I think that the Imprisoned bless is kind of not worth it. So like, I'm sure that there exists Imprisoned blesses. Like maybe if Mending Bones was Imprisoned and you just wanted it for Reforming Flash, or for tarts or whatever, or maybe Reforming Flash. I don't know. I'm sure that there exists reasons to do Imprisoned Incarnates. I don't think that they're any good. I think that they're probably even worse than in Dominions 5, because there's no like, your design points are even tighter than they were in 5, and so you would need an even greater reason to justify it, and just denying yourself resources for that long just kind of feels bad. Anyway, that was all 11, and I'll just go over them again really quickly. We have Awake Expander. We have Awake Scales Expander. We have which Awake Scales Expander is just scales nations that just want a chassis to clear out their cap circle as quickly as possible. We have a Awake Researcher, which is mostly for nations who can thug or super combatant expand. Also, some nations want to hit like early timing as quickly as possible for the first war. Awake Researchers can also be decent for them. Then we have Awake Incarnate Stacker, which Awake Incarnate Stacker is mostly doing things in the same path. So like Regen Barkskin, Awe or Fear, Hardskin Fortitude, Blood Bond, Enchanted Blood. Awake Incarnate Stacker is now the best way, the cheapest way to get a big bless, an impactful bless on a nation. And it's mostly for nations that have good sacreds but don't want to spend too much on them. And that's pretty good. Then lastly, we have a Hell Bless, which is harder to do before unless you're Agartha or Abyssia or any nation that gets free bless points. Hell Bless is still viable, but I question honestly, they might even be better since mages are harder to get online. I will solidify my opinion on Hell Blesses after playing more games. Next up, we have the Dormants, which are going to come out around turn 12, usually for your first war. We have the Dormant Defender, which is either an immobile or a Titan. Immobiles are just Dominions 4, Titans are Dominions 3. And they're, you could even have some Dominion 2. I mean, like, if you wanted this guy so he could Cloud Trapeze Fear on people. But, it's usually these two, because you're waiting for magic and equipment to come online. And they can magic phase pretty good. Some nations just need them, so like EA Baratos. But they're probably a little bit worse, but still, Dormant Defenders, really decent. I think that they're one of the best types besides... besides like Imprisoned Rainbows and stuff like that. Next up, we have Dormant Site Searcher. Hey, it's a normal rainbow with a lot of paths, but the main reason you're getting it is for magic diversity. I think it's very viable and helps you scale immensely into the late game. Just, you need to be able to give up scales or give up magic pass or give up something in order to get one online. Next up, you have the Dormant Hellbless. Not super viable. Some nations can do it. Yeah. Usually nations that don't require... Like, you could do a Dormant Hellbless on Pangaea, because, hey, their centaurs, not just their white centaurs, but their regular centaurs can also expand pretty well. And they don't need, sloth. I mean, they don't need sloth, so you can just throw that, and, hey, it gets you more design points. So you could probably go Dormant Hellbless on Pangaea. I kind of want to try that now. But, yeah, usually you're just going to need to find a way to get your extra points somewhere. Don't think it's that viable. And then lastly, we have our Imprisoned, which are going to be coming out in turn 36. And Imprisoned scales, kind of worse. We're only going to be able to get one scale to 3. They're not that viable. But at least we can stitch kind of a small bless together. Imprisoned Rainbow, still really good. Was the best. Is probably still the best. And they're just like ubiquitous because they are good. And they're even more flexible now than they used to be. You can, do mage blesses. You can do normal blesses. You could have them for counters. You can even just get stats so they're better at normal fighting. They're just so flexible and good. And then lastly is Imprisoned stat blesses and like Imprisoned Incarnate blesses, and those are both just like bad. And by Imprisoned stat, I'm specifically talking about Imprisoned Incarnate stack, where you stacked one path to 9. Those are both kind of non-viable now. So non-viable, I didn't even include both those as like separate things. If you want my overall opinion, I think that a Imprisoned Rainbow is probably the best kind of pretender right now. Obviously, it varies by nation, and so like this is a vast overgeneralization. But Imprisoned Rainbow fixes magic diversity issues for nations, gives you a powerful bless for your sacred, and they're just so flexible. You can empower what is good, you can fix what is wrong, and you can plug holes. And so that's why they're just the best, and you can also still get decent scales while doing all of that. Probably the second best to Imprisoned Rainbow is a Dormant Defender, actually. I would probably say that there's just a lot of utility. You can use them to plug magic pass. You can use them for fighting your first war. It's hard to go wrong. If your opponents can figure out counters to them, that's where you get problems. But that's what the magic phase is for. You scout out your opponent's army, and then you then you magic phase on top of them. And yeah, it's hard to go wrong with a Dormant Defender. Oftentimes you're not going to get as good of bless or as nice of scales, but the benefit is you get a pretender who can actually smack stuff around. And a lot of them can super combatant, especially super... Oh, I didn't realize that this guy had a reanimation bonus. Interesting. Sorry. So, that's just something to think about. Dormant Defenders, pretty useful, especially for nations with weak early games. I'm not sure if EA Statistics qualifies anymore, because now they can chariot expand. But anyway, Dormant Defenders pretty good. And then I would say probably the third best one is the Awake Incarnate stacker. Gets the best things about Awake researchers as you get your research to help start out early. But, just being able to like pump one thing up a lot and then use, all the other paths to benefit. I mean, oftentimes the stacked blesses are super useful. So, like, if I had Undead, I could do Stygian Flesh and Reforming Flesh. And, like, now all of a sudden I would just, and then I could stack a bunch of points of Undying. And, like, I would just be running over kids. And that has been my experience, is that people can just run over kids by doing Awake Incarnate stackers. And your blesses end up not being that expensive. You often still have decent scales and good magic paths to plug your holes and everything else. Anything besides those three... I mean, Awake Expanders are still viable. Yeah. I would probably say that those three plus potentially Awake Expanders are the most viable for, like, playing the game right now. And, we'll see how the meta develops and everything else. But, hey, if you're new, would recommend doing one of those. You know, and the simplest thing is to do awake expanders. You can always look up guides online. But you know, the biggest thing you want for awake expanders is high prot, and built-in regen is nice. And so like, hey, this is a decent one. You can moss body everything else. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. I'm going to be looking to change my upload schedule in the near future. Well, I guess right now to be 2 times a week, hopefully on Thursday and Saturday. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I really appreciate all y'all for listening, and wish you guys the best. Peace.